2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Mid Sussex District Council Cabinet. For the benefit of members of the public watching, I'm Councillor John Shivers, the leader of the council. We'll begin with the roll call and the virtual meeting explanation. So before I do that, I'll just confirm that the members on the screen are members of the Cabinet, elected councillors and the council's management team, and off screen we have serving councillors and officers as well. I'll turn to the roll call then to confirm members present. If I can invite members to confirm they are indeed present when I call them. Councillor Wellenberg.
Present.
Councillor Belsey.
Present.
Councillor Demir.
Present.
Councillor Hillier.
Present.
Councillor Salisbury.
Present.
And Councillor Webster.
Present.
Thank you, and I'll turn to the Solicitor of the Council, Tom Clark, to do the virtual meeting explanation. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. You're meeting today on a virtual basis by virtue of the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements Meeting and Access to Information Regulations 2012, which allow executive cabinet meetings to meet in a virtual format.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you. Item 2, to receive any declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Colleagues, are there any declarations? There are none. Item 3, to receive apologies for absence. I think we are all present. Item 4, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of September. That are in our packs, colleagues. If I can invite members to use the yes and no buttons under reactions on Zoom to indicate whether we're happy to agree those minutes, please. Those minutes are agreed. Thank you. Item 5, to consider any items the leader agrees to take as urgent business. There are none. That takes us to item 6, performance monitoring for the first quarter of 2021-22. I'll turn to the head of corporate resources, Peter Stewart, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. The subject of this report has had a very good airing already, of course, at the Scrutiny Committee on the 15th of September. And I don't intend to go over the actual stats that were presented at that meeting, save to say that, of course, 71% of our stats are green. A very good state of affairs, I think. But the scrutiny meeting itself was of value because on the evening, members raised a number of topics actually, which you'll find in paragraphs 12 to 17. And obviously, just 6 paragraphs doesn't really do justice to the meeting that we attended. But what came out of that is a minor program of work, if you like, to improve the stats you see before you and to add more detail. So, for example, in paragraph 13, members were quite keen to see more stats around fly tipping and how that was dealt with. In paragraph 14, the very popular subject of the electric vehicle charging project was brought up, and members are very keen to see further KPIs there around how often they were used, the amount of charge they delivered, turnaround times for repairs and what have you. And as part of the contract that we are part of with West Sussex County Council, a whole plethora of stats will be coming before members early in 2022, which hopefully will satisfy most members with an interest in this affair. In paragraph 15, this displayed the paragraph describes the appetite for members to see longer term trends displayed as part of the report, so that members can actually position, if you like, the first quarter of this year amongst the longer term history of some of these indicators, and that will be done for next time around when we come back to looking at reporting options for future meetings. And finally, there's in paragraph 17, there was a discussion around planning enforcement targets, and members requested more information on enforcement notices and those associated activities. So I think a useful scrutiny meeting. It is a product of our committee timetable that we're now in mid-October, and you're only seeing the first quarter as stats, unfortunately. But it's also something to do with the fact that the summer sort of gets in the way, if you like, and as we'll actually catch up in the year. So the second half, the first 6 months of 21-22 stats will follow on more quickly now than this set of statistics before you today. So I think overall, I'd say a good set of stats, and the scrutiny committee are certainly on top of their scrutinising of what's given to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart, for that introduction. I'll turn to the portfolio with first, Councillor Llewellyn.
Thank you, Chairman. As Mr. Stewart said, they're a very good set of results. We have been seeing the end, well, hopefully the end of the pandemic, and there have been extra duties put on the council, which the council has dealt with very well. There are certain aspects that were brought up in the scrutiny committee that you've raised, and some of them I think bear more discussion. For example, with the comment about going back in history. Well, we've had a very strange 2 years, haven't we? Where some of the data, you could say, well, what use is that data? Because we've had a pandemic, and therefore, it's pretty useless. It just tells you how difficult it was, or it tells you how well you've done. So I'd rather, in a way, look forward and look in the current year and be more short term than looking back, say, 3 or 4 years, because the world is a very different place now than it was then. So there's a limit as to what historical data is useful. So looking at the statistics that we have in front of us, and sorry, the data that we have in front of us, and bearing in mind that we're going to have a new report out soon, I just wondered, with the traffic light system in my portfolio, for example, in finance, we've done very well. The percentage of undisputed invoices has actually increased. It's above the target, so we've done very well, 97.5%. And then the percentage of the rent due that was collected was 90%. And I wondered whether you had a comment, Mr. Stewart, on that 90% of rent that's been collected, because that seems very high, and what that is like compared to other local authorities or to other property owners.
Well, Chairman, if I may, on that second point, this is because we've taken a very proactive approach, really, where we have been agreeing, especially with the retailers, we have been agreeing revised rental arrangements, and members will see many of those coming through MIS. So what that means is, effectively, you are measuring against a new figure, effectively, rather than putting invoices into dispute, and therefore reducing your collection figures. So as I sit here today, I can't think of any cases where we are in dispute with our tenant over the level of rent that is being demanded. We are seeking to make arrangements from people who ask and can display hardship or good reason why their rents have needed amending during the pandemic. And there are some good reasons for that, especially in the retail industry. We have been seeking to be a good and fair landlord and agreeing the appropriate level of rent. So I think our collection figures bear that out. That actually the relationship between the landlord and tenant needs to be fair and reasonable, and where that occurs, the tenant is very often able to pay the agreed rent. I haven't got any stats, I'm afraid, against other authorities, though. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webster.
Chairman, I wanted to just pick up on the comment that Councillor Llewellyn Burke made about the last couple of years being far from normal, and she's absolutely right in that regard. And the council has had to pick up a number of different areas where additional work has been required, and that's covered in paragraph 10, and it includes revenues and benefits administering new grants to local business. And that's made a really significant difference to the viability of the local mid-Sussex economy. We've had the environmental health involvement ensuring COVID compliant business, and that's made a real difference to businesses that have had to change the way they operate entirely. And it's made a massive difference to small restaurants who moved to delivery service only. And then we've had housing and the additional responsibilities there. And it's gone on and on. And I really think that we need to focus on those areas where we can make a difference. And I also want to, if I may, just say something about paragraph 14 and the installation of the EV charging points, which of course are not part of our business, but it is something that we want to do to improve the number of people, to encourage people to switch to electric powered vehicles or hybrid vehicles, because anything that we can do to help the environment is to be welcomed. I'm slightly concerned about getting a plethora of statistics in the new year, but hopefully they'll all be relevant. And we need to actually know what the usage is of them, what the downtime is, and those sorts of useful stats, because delivering petrol or diesel filling stations or electric charging points is not really part of our statutory responsibility. And we've spent an awful lot of time talking about things like this in the past. And I hope that we can get the EV charging points installed and move on to those other things that are of great importance to us as a council. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Belstead.
Thank you, Chairman. And indeed, I was going to echo Councillor Webster's potential concern over the use of Peter Stewart of a plethora of statistics coming forward. I hope that they will all be useful and meaningful, helping inform us as members and residents. And I look forward to the rollout of additional EV charging points later this financial year. I just also wanted to pick up on the comments from scrutiny on fly tipping. Obviously, I'm very pleased that historically and to date, fly tipping has been lower in mid-Sussex than in many of our neighbouring authorities. And I know officers continue to review cases with the view to looking at enforcement and prosecution wherever possible. But of course, we're not complacent at all about our fly tipping levels. And just wanted to say that should the next KPI review include discussion of fly tipping indicators, I'd be interested in that discussion. But subject to the comments made just now regarding the EV charging points, well, I hope that the data and metrics chosen can be subject to meaningful interpretation. So I look forward to seeing the outcomes of that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DeMere.
Thank you, Leader. Really, to reiterate, I picked up on paragraph 10 of Mr. Stewart's excellent report, that some parts of the council have had additional responsibilities, that certainly revenue and benefits have worked beyond any kind of wish we would want. As you know, they've processed and paid out over £48.5 million worth of grants, which has made a huge amount of difference to both residents and to the economy. So I'm rather proud of them that they have done so well. I do feel some of the KPIs are, as we've already discussed, probably a little out of date. Some of them are very close to the target set, but certainly on a few of the revenue and benefits ones, it has improved as of the end of September. And I was especially pleased to see the amount of help that our ICT help desk has given. I think they've done a phenomenal job, not only from their cabinet member who is forever asking for help, but they are really up to speed now, and I congratulate them. That's what I needed to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier.
Thank you. Yeah, very little to say. It's a slim and good report. I was actually going to comment, as per Councillor Webster all has done, from my perspective of the economy, to credit the environmental team and thank them for all the support and the fact that they've managed to maintain their performance whilst doing all that support to our retail and leisure sector is a huge credit to where that team has been managed and the steps that were taken to boost it. So thank you very, very much. Also welcome is the footfall figures, which continuing to show a return. And I've got a question that I'm not sure if Judy Holmes can answer, is whether you could provide an update on what the future looks like for measuring the footfall across the district. Obviously, we've had some measures that have been put in and supported by COVID funding. And if there's any update on that, I'd be very grateful. And the other thing I just want to say, I was very glad to see again in my colleague Community Norman Webster's portfolio, it was really good to see how the wellbeing work is moving ahead and catching up, so important post-COVID. So a good report and just that one question. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart. Councillor Webster, you indicated you wanted to answer them.
Chairman, I believe one question was for Judy Holmes, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Judy, thank you.
No.
We've lost Judy. Councillor Webster, I'll come back to Judy.
Thank you for allowing me to come back. I did want to just highlight the additional financial burdens of COVID to the council, and not all of those, of course, are recoverable from central government, and we have incurred a drop of income in a number of areas which have been covered at previous meetings. But I just thought it was worth repeating that. And I wanted to thank Councillor Belsey for referring to my rant as comments. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. I'll come back to Judy Holmes to know whether we can hear you, Judy. No, we've lost your sound, Judy, I'm afraid. Are there any other officers who can help with that question?
Sorry, can you
Judy, yes, hello.
I'm sorry, my system was working earlier when I did the test. I don't know what happens. I think it defaults. Beg your pardon. Just to respond to Councillor Hillier's question on measuring footfall, Councillor Hillier is quite right. We did take advantage of government funding, specifically reopening high streets and welcome back funding, to commission some footfall data in our 3 towns and 5 larger villages. We are looking at extending that beyond the current arrangements, which end in March 2022, because we found that information to be extremely helpful in us understanding the return to the high streets and the impact on our high streets. So that is a work in progress, and we will be looking at ways of being able to maintain that. I hope that answers your question, and sorry about the technical issues.
Thank you very much. Councillor DeMere.
Thank you. One question that I forgot to ask, but probably they will be coming out in the figures any second. Paragraph 12, Mr. Stewart, when you talk about the increase in the amount of waste taken to landfill, I'm assuming now we're getting back to normal, as normal as we have been for the last couple of months. So I'm assuming the figures that will be coming out very shortly will see a downturn in those.
Chairman, it's really one for the Assistant Chief Executive, to be honest, but I wouldn't make any such assumptions, but I'll let Judy answer that one.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, as you know, we've been seeing an increase in the amount of waste going to landfill because of people working from home. So it is really, really difficult to predict. As with all of the pandemic-related matters, we've never had it before, so it's really hard to know what the recovery will look like. But certainly, we would hope that as more people return to work, that we will see a reduction. But of course, we continue to educate and encourage through campaigns to encourage people to recycle as much as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other points that anyone would like to raise? If not, I will turn into the recommendations, please, members. The recommendations on page 7 is that we're recommended to note the Council's performance in the first quarter of the year and identify any areas where further reporting or information is required. If I can ask members to vote on that recommendation, please, in the usual way. Thank you. That is unanimously agreed. The report is noted. And that brings us to the end of this afternoon's Cabinet meeting. So I'll close the meeting at 4:22 and just remind members to remain while the live feed is switched